The ships appeared on every telescope and radar screen across Earth on a Tuesday morning. They came from beyond the edge of the solar system, moving in perfect formation. 500 vessels, each one larger than Earth's moon. Their hulls gleaming silver against the darkness of space. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the command center deep beneath Colorado, watching the screens with her arms crossed. Around her, dozens of officers worked at their stations, their faces pale and tense. Nobody spoke above a whisper. The weight of what they were seeing pressed down on everyone in the room. Distance? Chun asked quietly. Passing Jupiter's orbit now, ma'am, Lieutenant Hayes replied. His voice cracked slightly. Current speed puts them at Earth's orbit in 72 hours. Chun nodded slowly. 72 hours. 3 days until humanity met its first alien civilization. 3 days until everything changed. The message came an hour later. It broadcast on every frequency humanity had ever used. Translated perfectly into every major language on Earth. The voice was cold and mechanical, utterly without emotion. Primitive species of the third planet. We are the Vraxian hegemony. We have traveled the stars for 3,000 of your years. We have brought 47 species into our collective. You will surrender your world within 24 hours. You will accept our guidance. Resistance is impossible. Your technology is inferior. Your weapons are meaningless. Submit, and your species will survive as servants of the hegemony. Refuse, and you will be eliminated. The transmission ended. Silence filled the command center. Chun turned to her communications officer. Cut all outgoing signals. Everything. Satellites, radio, television, internet backbones. I want Earth to go dark. Ma'am? The officer looked confused. Do it now. Make them think we're paralyzed with fear. I want complete radio silence across the planet within the hour. As the orders went out, Chun walked to her private office and locked the door. She sat at her desk and pulled out a red folder marked with a single word. Hydra. Her hand shook as she opened it. Protocol. Hydra had been developed 15 years ago by a small group of military strategists and scientists. They had asked a simple question. What if first contact was hostile? What if aliens came not as friends but as conquerors? The protocol had been mocked by politicians and diplomats. War with aliens was impossible, they said. Any species advanced enough for space travel would surely be peaceful. Chun had never believed that. Humans had reached space, and humans were still very good at war. She picked up her secure phone and began making calls. Around the world, hidden facilities came to life. On the dark side of the moon, construction yards that officially didn't exist began their final assembly sequences. In orbit around Mars, weapons platforms disguised as research stations activated their targeting systems. Throughout the asteroid belt, mining operations that had been losing money for years suddenly revealed their true purpose. Dr. James Park sat in one of those asteroid facilities, watching his screens with growing excitement. For 5 years, he had been building railguns disguised as mining equipment. Magnetic accelerators that could launch chunks of metal at incredible speeds. His funding had come through black-budget military programs, hidden inside legitimate mining company accounts. How many rounds do we have ready? He asked his team. 73,000 tungsten rods, Doctor, his assistant replied. Each one weighing 200 kilograms. Park smiled. 73,000 bullets, each one traveling fast enough to punch through a mountain. The Vraxians had no idea they were sitting at the bottom of a gravity while surrounded by weapons. In Moscow, Beijing, Washington, London, and a dozen other cities, leaders received the same briefing. Earth's military had been preparing for this possibility for over a decade. Not openly, of course. The public thought the massive increase in space industry was about mining and colonization. They didn't know that every factory in orbit could switch to weapons. Production in hours. Commander Amara Okoi sat in the cockpit of her fighter, docked at a station orbiting Earth. The fighter looked like a civilian transport vessel from the outside. Inside, it was something else entirely. Her orders were simple. Wait for the signal, then use the moon's gravity to slingshot her squadron toward the enemy at maximum speed. You really think this will work? Her wingman asked over the radio. Physics doesn't lie, Okoi replied. Momentum equals mass times velocity. We're up big, but we'll be going fast enough to punch through their hulls like paper. In Shanghai, a young woman named Lin Wei sat in a darkened room surrounded by computer screens. She was part of a team that most governments didn't officially acknowledge. Hackers, programmers, AI specialists. For 2 years, they had been studying every signal the Vraxians transmitted. The aliens were arrogant, broadcasting in the clear, never imagining that the primitive humans might be listening and learning. Their security is outdated, Lin said to her team. It's sophisticated, but it hasn't changed in centuries. They're complacent. Can we break it? Her supervisor asked. Give me 72 hours. Around the world, factories retooled overnight. 3D printers began producing weapon components. Chemical plants switched to explosive production. Civilian drones were converted into kamikaze vehicles. Every resource humanity possessed was being directed toward a single goal: survival. The Vraxians watched Earth go silent and assumed the humans were paralyzed with fear. Their psychologists predicted immediate surrender. After all, every other species had submitted within hours of seeing the hegemony's fleet, but the Vraxians had never fought humans before. On the third day, as their vanguard entered Earth's orbit, Admiral Chun stood in her command center surrounded by her officers. Every screen showed enemy positions. Every readiness indicator glowed green. Throughout the solar system, thousands of weapons that shouldn't exist waited for her command. Chun thought about her daughter, safe in a bunker in New Zealand. She thought about every human on Earth, 7 billion people who had no idea how close they were to extinction or how hard their defenders were about to fight. All stations, she said quietly. This is Admiral Chun. Execute Protocol Hydra. The war began with physics and fury. The first Vraxian ship died without warning. A tungsten rod, launched from an asteroid facility 3 days earlier, struck its hull at 7 kilometers per second. The impact released more energy than a nuclear weapon. The ship's shields, designed to stop energy beams and missiles, did nothing against a solid chunk of metal moving at relativistic speed. The rod punched clean through the ship, front to back, and the vessel broke apart in a silent explosion of atmosphere and debris. 22 more ships died in the next 30 seconds. The Vraxians had entered Earth's orbit in a standard formation, the same pattern they had used for 3,000 years. It had always worked before, but they had never fought an enemy that had been watching, calculating, and preparing for days. Dr. Park watched from his control station in the asteroid belt as his railguns fired in sequence. Each one could only fire once before overheating, but he had built hundreds of them throughout the belt. They'd been calculating trajectories for 72 hours, waiting for the Vraxians to move into position. Reload teams, begin recovery operations, he said calmly, though his hands shook with adrenaline. We'll get one more volley before they figure out where we are. The Vraxian fleet scattered. Their formation broke as captains tried to evade an enemy they couldn't see. Their sensors showed no ships, no energy signatures, nothing but empty space and chunks of rock that shouldn't be threats. Admiral Chun watched the chaos on her screens with grim satisfaction. Phase 2. Launch the drone swarms. From dozens of hidden positions around Earth and the Moon, thousands of small craft launched into space. They looked like civilian satellites and cargo pods. The Vraxian sensors classified them as debris, fleeing refugees. Nothing worth targeting. Then the drones activated their engines and swarmed toward the nearest Vraxian ships like angry hornets. Fleet Commander Zekthar of the Vraxian Vanguard stared at his tactical display in confusion. The primitive species was attacking with small craft that barely registered on his sensors. Each one was smaller than his ship's point defense could easily target, but there were thousands of them. Tens of thousands. His point defense systems fired frantically, destroying dozens of drones with each salvo. But for every 10 they destroyed, one got through. The drones weren't sophisticated. They were simply packed with explosives and programmed to ram at maximum speed. Shields holding at 70%, his tactical officer reported. 65%. 60%. How many more of these insects are there? Zekthar demanded. Sensors show over 40,000 inbound, Commander. 40,000. Zekthar felt something he hadn't experienced in decades of conquest. Uncertainty. Commander Okoi's squadron launched from the far side of the moon. Her fighter's engine burned at maximum thrust, pushing her back into her seat with crushing force. She had done the calculations herself. The moon's gravity would slingshot them around at speeds no normal combat maneuver would attempt. Stay in formation, she told her squadron. We're only going to get one pass. Make it count. Her fighter screamed around the moon at a velocity that made her instruments flash warning after warning. The hull temperature climbed dangerously high. The G-forces made her vision narrow to a tunnel. But the math was perfect. They came around the moon like bullets fired from a gun, aimed directly at a cluster of Vraxian capital ships. The aliens saw them coming 3 seconds before impact. Far too late. Okai's fighter, all 20 tons of it, hit a Vraxian dreadnought at 12 kilometers per second. The impact vaporized her ship and punched a hole through the alien vessel's armor that atmosphere and crew members came pouring through. 5 more fighters from her squadron found their targets. 2 missed and flew off into space, their pilots already dead from the G-forces. Okoi never knew if she'd succeeded. She died instantly in the collision, but her name would be remembered. In Shanghai, Lin Wei's fingers flew across her keyboard. The Vraxians had finally realized they were under cyber attic, but they were responding too slowly. Their security systems were sophisticated but predictable. They followed patterns, used strategies that had worked for centuries against other species. But those species hadn't grown up with the internet. They hadn't spent decades defending against hackers, developing firewalls, creating constantly evolving security measures. The Vraxian systems were like a medieval castle, impressive but outdated. I'm in their communication network, Lin announced. Uploading the virus now. The virus was simple but devastating. It displayed false information on Vraxian tactical screens. Ships that were actually damaged showed as functional. Energy reserves appeared full when they were depleted. Most importantly, it made human forces appear in locations where nothing existed, forcing the aliens to waste ammunition on ghosts. Admiral Chun watched as the Vraxian formation collapsed into chaos. Their vanguard was retreating, trying to regroup beyond the moon's orbit. They had lost 31 ships in less than an hour. For a force that had never lost more than 5 ships in any previous conquest, it was unthinkable. Deploy the civilian fleet, Chun ordered. Her officers hesitated. Ma'am, those are unarmed vessels. Cargo haulers, passenger ships. They're decoys, Chun said flatly. And their crews volunteered. Deploy them now. 300 civilian ships launched from Earth's orbit, broadcasting surrender signals on all frequencies. They approached the Vraxian fleet slowly, their pilots acting terrified and defeated. The Vraxians, desperate for any victory to report to their superiors, moved to capture the ships. It was the opportunity they needed, a chance to show they were still in control. When the Vraxian boarding parties approached the civilian ships, they found them empty, except for remotely piloted systems and massive amounts of explosives. The ships detonated simultaneously, destroying or crippling another 18 Vraxian vessels. Fleet Commander Zekthar stared at his screens in disbelief. These tactics violated every rule of honorable warfare. Decoys, suicide attacks, hidden weapons, cyber warfare. The humans fought like animals, without dignity or honor. And it was working. "Request reinforcements from the main fleet," he ordered. "Tell the hegemon that the humans are not surrendering. Tell him we need the full armada." The message went out across the Vraxian communication network. In the command centers of the hegemony's 12-member species, military leaders watched the battle with growing alarm. In 3,000 years, no species had ever fought back this effectively. On Earth, Admiral Chun received reports of the Vraxian message. Good. They were calling for reinforcements. That meant they were scared. That meant humanity had a chance. She looked at the faces of her officers. They were exhausted, terrified, but determined. They had just bloodied the nose of an empire that had conquered 47 civilizations. Against impossible odds, they had proven that humanity could fight. But Chun knew this was only the beginning. The real battle was still to come. All stations, maintain combat operations. Start rotating crews for rest. This is a marathon, not a sprint. She paused, then added quietly, "And somebody get me a damage report on Snowpollo." The officer's face went pale. "Ma'am, Snowpollo was hit by orbital bombardment 2 hours ago. The city is gone. Estimated casualties at 3 million. The command center fell silent. 3 million people. Dead in an instant because the Vraxians had decided to punish Earth for fighting back. Chun felt rage building in her chest, hot and fierce. The Vraxians thought that would break humanity's spirit. They thought humans would surrender rather than face more losses. They had no idea how wrong they were. The news of Snowpollo spread across Earth within minutes. Every screen, every device, every communication channel showed the same images. A crater where a city had been. Smoke rising into the atmosphere, and 3 million lives simply erased. Admiral Chun had expected panic. She had expected despair. What she got instead made her believe humanity might actually survive. People didn't surrender. They got angry. In Tokyo, factory workers volunteered for triple shifts to build more weapons. In Lagos, programmers joined Lin Wei's cyber warfare teams. In New York, retired pilots came out of retirement and demanded assignment to combat squadrons. Across the planet, 7 billion humans looked at the crater where Snowpollo had been and made the same decision. They would rather die fighting than live as slaves. Dr. Amara Okonkwo, a xenopsychologist who had spent her career studying theoretical alien contact scenarios, recorded a message from a bunker in Geneva. She didn't ask permission. She simply hacked into the Vraxian communication network and broadcast to every species in the hegemony. "You don't understand us," she said, her voice steady and clear. "You think destroying one of our cities will break our spirit. You're wrong. You've just given us a reason to never stop fighting. We're the species that survived ice ages and plagues. We're the descendants of persistence hunters who chased prey until it died of exhaustion. We split the atom and went to the moon just to prove we could. And now you've killed 3 million of us. You've made this personal." She paused, staring directly into the camera. "There are 7 billion of us. You can't kill us all before we drag you down with us. So I'll make you an offer on behalf of my species. Leave now, while you still can. Because humans don't fight until it's practical to stop. We fight until we win or we're extinct. There is no third option in our psychology." The message went viral across the hegemony's communication network. Member species watched in fascination and horror. The humans' tactics were brutal and violated every convention of civilized warfare. But they were working. The Vraxian main fleet arrived 3 days later. 469 ships, the largest armada ever assembled by the hegemony. They entered the solar system with their weapons charged and their shields at maximum, expecting determined resistance. What they found was silence. Earth had gone dark again. No communications, no energy signatures, no ships in orbit. The moon bases appeared abandoned. The asteroid belt was quiet. Hegemon Kravik, supreme leader of the Vraxian hegemony, studied the tactical displays from his flagship. "Where are they?" "Unknown, Hegemon," his tactical officer replied. "Sensors show minimal activity. Perhaps they've retreated underground. Or perhaps they're planning another ambush," Kravik said coldly. He had reviewed the recordings from the Vanguard battle. The humans' tactics were savage but effective. Advance in dispersed formation. Maximum sensor range. Shoot anything that moves. The fleet moved forward cautiously. They passed Mars without incident. They passed the asteroid belt. Their sensors sweeping for hidden weapons. Nothing. They were halfway to Earth when Linway's virus activated. Every Vraxian ship simultaneously received what appeared to be critical system alerts. Reactor overheats, shield failures, weapons malfunctions. None of it was real, but the ship's automated systems responded as if it were. Ships dropped out of formation to run diagnostics. Weapons systems powered down. Shields flickered. That's when Admiral Chun sprang her trap. The missiles had been launched weeks ago, long before the Vraxians even arrived at Earth. Slow cold, their engines shut down to avoid detection. They had been drifting through space on ballistic trajectories, positioned along the exact route the Vraxian fleet would take. Now, at Chun's signal, thousands of missiles activated their engines simultaneously. They were crude weapons by galactic standards, built with human technology. But they appeared from every direction at once, and the Vraxian fleet was in disarray from the false system alerts. All stations, Chun broadcast across every human frequency. Execute Operation Thermopylae. The name was symbolic. 300 Spartans had held a pass against an army at Thermopylae. Now, humanity would hold the line against an empire. But Chun's strategy went beyond defending Earth. She had studied the intelligence Linway's team had gathered from Vraxian communications. The hegemony controlled 47 species, but many of them resented their masters. They obeyed out of fear, not loyalty. Chun was about to give them hope. The missiles she had launched months ago hadn't all been aimed at the Vraxian fleet. Some had been aimed at hegemony supply depots, communication hubs, and military stations throughout local space. They were arriving at their targets right now, light years away from Earth. Simultaneously, human AI systems began broadcasting across the hegemony's network. They sent detailed intelligence packages to every client species. Fleet positions, supply routes, weapons capabilities, tactical weaknesses. Everything humanity had learned in 3 days of desperate warfare. The message was simple. This is humanity. We're proving that tyrants can be beaten. Join us or stay out of our way. The choice is yours. 7 species answered immediately. They had been waiting for this moment for decades, for centuries. They just needed someone to prove it was possible to fight back. The Vraxian hegemony, which had stood for 3,000 years, began to crack. Hegemon Kravik watched his empire collapse in real time. Rebellions on 7 worlds. Supply lines cut. His fleet at Earth was taking casualties and running low on ammunition. The humans were fighting with a ferocity his psychologists had said was impossible. "How many ships have we lost?" he demanded. 93 confirmed destroyed, Hegemon. Another 47 too damaged to continue fighting. Nearly a third of his fleet, against a species that didn't even have faster-than-light travel. Hegemon, We're receiving a transmission from the human command. They're requesting a parley. Kravik felt shame burn through him. In 3,000 years, the hegemony had never negotiated. They dictated terms. But now, with his empire crumbling and his fleet bleeding, he had no choice, except their transmission. Admiral Chun appeared on his screen. She looked exhausted, her uniform rumpled, her eyes hard. Behind her, Kravik could see her command center, still functioning despite days of continuous combat. "Hegemon Kravik," Chun said without preamble. "Let me be clear about your situation. Your empire is collapsing. 7 of your client species are in open rebellion, and we've given them all the intelligence they need to win. Your fleet is cut off from resupply. You've lost over 100 ships fighting a species you thought was primitive. And we're still here. Still fighting. Still killing your ships." She leaned forward. "So here's what's going to happen. You're going to order your fleet to withdraw. You're going to leave this solar system and never come back. You're going to release every species under your control and let them choose their own governments. And if you do all of that, we'll let you retreat with what's left of your fleet. And if I refuse?" Kravik asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then we'll keep killing your ships until there's nothing left. We have 3 billion more volunteers ready to fight. We have factories that can build weapons faster than you can destroy them. And we have absolutely nothing left to lose." Chun's expression was stone. "You came to Earth offering us slavery. Now I'm offering you survival. Take it." Kravik looked at his tactical displays, at the reports of rebellion spreading through his empire, at the wreckage of his fleet floating in space around Earth. He had come to conquer humanity. Instead, humanity had destroyed everything he had built. "We will withdraw," he said quietly. The Vraxian fleet left Earth's solar system 6 hours later. They moved slowly, their formation broken, their ships scarred and damaged. Behind them, they left debris fields that would orbit Earth for generations, silent monuments to humanity's first war among the stars. Admiral Chun watched them go from her command center. She hadn't slept in 4 days. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago. Around her, her officers sat at their stations in exhausted silence. They had won, but the cost had been devastating. "Casualty report," she said quietly. Lieutenant Hayes pulled up the numbers. His voice was hoarse. 12 million dead on Earth from orbital bombardments. Another 300,000 in space combat. 42 cities damaged or destroyed. Our orbital infrastructure is 90% destroyed. We've lost 2/3 of our space-capable vessels. 12 million people. Chun closed her eyes. They had won the war, but those millions would never know it. They had died so humanity could remain free. And the good news? She asked, because there had to be some. The other species that rebelled against the hegemony are holding their own. The Vraxians are retreating on all fronts. Intelligence suggests the hegemony will collapse within months. We're receiving thanks from 7 different civilizations. Hayes paused. "And ma'am, we're getting a message from something called the Galactic Council. They say they want to talk." Chun nodded slowly. The galaxy was larger than humanity had imagined, and apparently more organized. "Put it through." The being that appeared on her screen was unlike anything Chun had seen in the Vraxian broadcasts. It had 4 arms, crystalline skin, and eyes that seemed to contain entire universes. When it spoke, its voice was translated into perfect English. "Admiral Chun, I am Ambassador Velther of the Galactic Council. We represent 237 species across this region of space. We have been watching your conflict with the Vraxian hegemony with great interest." "Watching," Chun said flatly. "Not helping. The Council does not interfere in wars of conquest. We learned long ago that forced peace creates resentment. Species must prove they can defend themselves. Velthur's expression was unreadable. "You have proven that, Admiral. Your tactics were brutal. You violated every convention of civilized warfare. You fought without honor or mercy." Chun felt anger rising in her chest. "They came to enslave us. They killed 12 million of my people. Don't talk to me about honor. I am not criticizing you, Admiral. I am explaining why the Council is impressed." Velthur leaned forward. "The Vraxian hegemony has been a problem for centuries. They were too powerful to challenge directly, and none of our member species were willing to risk war with them. You defeated them in less than 2 weeks with primitive technology and tactics we had never considered. We did what we had to do to survive." "Exactly. Exactly." "And that is why the Council wishes to extend an invitation. We would like humanity to join us as a member species. You would have access to our technology, our trade networks, our collective knowledge. In return, we would ask that you share your tactical innovations and assist in maintaining galactic stability." Chun stared at the alien ambassador. A week ago, humanity hadn't known aliens existed. Now they were being invited to join a galactic community as equals. "I need to consult with Earth governments," she said carefully. "This isn't my decision to make alone." "Of course. We will wait for your response." Velthur paused. "I should mention, Admiral, that your species has developed quite a reputation already. The footage of your battle was broadcast across half the galaxy. Many species are now wondering if their own governments are as stable as they thought. Revolution is spreading. Is that a good thing? That depends on your perspective. But change is often necessary, even when it's violent. You have shown the galaxy that determination and creativity can overcome superior technology. That is a lesson many needed to learn." The transmission ended, leaving Chun alone with her thoughts. Over the following months, Earth slowly recovered. Cities were rebuilt. The dead were mourned. But humanity had changed in fundamental ways. Dr. James Park supervised the construction of new weapons platforms. These ones not hidden but proudly displayed in orbit. "We'll never be caught unprepared again," he told his team. "The next species that comes to Earth will know exactly what we're capable of." Lin Wei and her team worked with scientists from newly liberated species, sharing knowledge and techniques. Human computer science, it turned out, was decades ahead of anything the hegemony had developed. The humans' constant warfare with hackers and viruses had forced them to evolve their security in ways the peaceful galaxy had never needed. "It's strange," Lin said to her colleague. "We developed these skills fighting each other. Now, they're the most valuable thing we can offer the galaxy." Commander Okoi's name was carved into a memorial on the moon, along with the names of hundreds of thousands who had died in the war. Her sacrifice had helped humanity survive, and her tactics were now being studied by military academies across dozens of worlds. Earth voted to join the Galactic Council, but with conditions. Humanity would share technology and knowledge, would participate in galactic society, but would maintain complete sovereignty. Human military forces would defend other species if asked, but Earth would never bow to another power. The Council agreed. They had seen what happened to those who tried to conquer humanity. 5 years after the war, Admiral Chun retired. She was old now, the stress of the war having aged her beyond her years. She moved to a small house in New Zealand, not far from where her daughter had sheltered during the darkest days. One afternoon, her granddaughter visited. The girl was 7 years old, born during the war. She had never known a world without aliens, without faster-than-light travel, without humanity's place among the stars. "Grandma," the girl asked, "what was it like when the aliens came?" Chun pulled out an old photograph. It showed Earth from space, taken during the battle. The planet was scarred, burning, covered in smoke from the orbital bombardments. But it was still there, still whole, still free. It was terrifying, Chine said honestly. We were fighting an enemy we didn't understand with weapons we had barely tested. We didn't know if we could win. Most of us thought we would die. But you won, the girl said. We survived. That's not quite the same thing. Chun looked at her granddaughter. We learned something important, though. We learned that humans will never stop fighting for what's ours. We learned that we're stronger than we thought. And we taught the galaxy the same lesson. What lesson? That you should never mistake kindness for weakness. Humans want peace. We want to explore and learn and grow. But if you threaten us, if you try to take our freedom, we'll fight with everything we have. We'll use tactics you've never seen. We'll adapt faster than you can respond. We'll never give up. The girl thought about this. Are the other aliens scared of us? Some are. But the smart ones respect us. They know we're not conquerors. We don't want an empire. We just want to be left alone to live our lives. Chun smiled. And we've proven we're very good at defending that right. That night, Chun stood in her garden and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, humans walked on alien worlds, traded with species that had been traveling space for millennia, learned secrets of the universe that would have seemed like magic a decade ago, but they did it as free people, not as servants or slaves. They did it because a generation of humans had looked at an impossible enemy and decided to fight anyway. The Vraxian hegemony had collapsed completely. Its former subjects now governed themselves. Some had joined the council. Others had chosen isolation. All of them remembered the species that had sparked their liberation. Earth had become something unexpected in galactic politics, a power broker. Not the strongest species militarily, not the most advanced technologically, but the one that everyone wanted as an ally and no one wanted as an enemy, because the galaxy had learned a simple truth. Humans were the ones you wanted on your side, because you never wanted them against you. Chun went inside as the stars came out. Somewhere up there, human ships patrolled trade routes, protecting the species that had once been enslaved. Human scientists worked in laboratories on distant worlds. Human artists and musicians shared their culture with beings who had never imagined such creativity. Humanity had joined the galaxy not as conquerors, but as defenders. Not as masters, but as partners. They had proven that determination and ingenuity could overcome any obstacle, that freedom was worth any cost. And that underestimating humans was the last mistake anyone would ever make. The war had ended 5 years ago, but its lessons would echo across the galaxy for generations. The Vraxians had come to Earth expecting an easy conquest. Instead, they had learned what humans had always known, that when faced with extinction, humanity doesn't surrender. It fights.